Welcome, dear viewers. For more exclusive, thrilling stories every week, join our membership. Sit back, relax, and sip your coffee. Enjoy. Ask anyone from Lanoke County about Highway 365, and they'll get this faraway look in their eyes. They won't tell you outright to avoid it, but they'll casually mention how they prefer the interstate, or only take that road during daylight. The stories vary depending on who's telling them. Old-timers mumble about Civil War soldiers who never found rest after a forgotten massacre near Wrightsville. Truckers swap tales of phantom hitchhikers and dashboard radios that pick up broadcasts from decades past. I never paid much attention to those stories until 3 months ago. My name's Daryl Hatcher. I worked as a fleet mechanic up in Little Rock until the layoffs hit last winter. With no prospects and rent coming due, I answered an ad in the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Experienced mechanic needed for night shift. Morgan's Auto Service, Highway 365, Scott. The pay was good, suspiciously good, but I wasn't about to question it. My apartment complex was threatening eviction, and my 2008 Dodge Neon needed a transmission rebuild I couldn't afford. So I drove south out of Little Rock, past the airport, and over the Arkansas River, and followed Highway 365 as it cut through farmland and pine forests. Morgan's Auto Service sat alone between Scott and Wrightsville, a weathered single-story building with 4 service bays, a small office, and a gravel lot surrounded by dense woods. The nearest neighbor was a boarded-up Exxon station half a mile north. The place looked like it had been built in the 70s and stubbornly refused to acknowledge any decade since. Earl Morgan was a grizzled man in his 60s, with forearms like tree trunks and nicotine-stained fingers. He wore faded Carhartt overalls and spoke with the thick drawl of someone who'd never ventured far from where he was born. "You'll work 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Monday through Friday," he said, not bothering with pleasantries. "Pays weekly cash. Shop's usually quiet. But when we get customers, you drop everything and help them. No questions asked." I waited for him to elaborate. He didn't. "Anything else I should know?" Earl studied me for an uncomfortable moment, then reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a laminated card. "We got rules here. Follow them exactly. You'll do fine." The card had 7 numbered items, typed out in faded courier font. Nothing too strange at first glance. Safety procedures, I figured, or company policies. "One more thing," Earl added as I pocketed the card. "Once your shift starts, you don't leave the property until dawn. Not for any reason." I laughed, thinking he was joking. His expression didn't change. "Highway gets dangerous at night," he said flatly. "Real dangerous." I needed that job, so I nodded, like this was a perfectly reasonable requirement. Earl handed me a ring of keys and told me to start that night. It wasn't until I was driving home that I pulled over to actually read the card. The rules weren't about oil disposal or customer service policies. They were different, specific in ways that made the hair on my neck stand up. But like I said, I needed the job. And how bad could a night shift at a rural garage really be? I found out on my first night, and every night since. What follows is my account of working at Morgan's Auto Service on Highway 365. I'm writing this down because I don't know how many more shifts I have left in me, and someone needs to know what happens out there in the dark. I arrived at Morgan's Auto Service at 9:45 p.m., giving myself time to get oriented before my shift. The air hung heavy with September humidity, frogs and cicadas creating a wall of sound from the surrounding woods. The gravel crunched under my tires as I pulled in, headlights sweeping across the empty lot. Earl was waiting by the door, smoking a Marlboro Red. He crushed it under his boot when he saw me. "Thought you might not show," he said, unlocking the office. The fluorescent tubes flickered to life. revealing a cluttered desk, a coffee maker with suspicious stains, and a wall of hooks holding various keys. "Go ahead and put your things in the break room." Earl gestured toward a door behind the counter. "I'll walk you through the basics." The break room contained a mini fridge, microwave, and a sagging couch that had likely been there since the Reagan administration. I set my lunch bag inside the fridge, next to a half-empty bottle of Mountain Dew that had probably been there just as long. Earl handed me a clipboard with paperwork, tax forms, and liability waivers, which I filled out while he explained the operation. "We get all types here. Truckers with blown tires, families with overheating radiators, locals who know we're the only place open past sunset." He tapped a finger against the service schedule. "Simple stuff. Tire changes, jump starts, basic fluid exchanges. You handle yourself. Anything complex, you call me." He pointed to an ancient rotary phone mounted on the wall. "That's my direct line. I live about 10 minutes away." "What about towing?" I asked. Earl shook his head. "We don't do that. If they can't get their vehicle here, there's someone else's problem." This seemed like an odd policy for a roadside garage, but I didn't press the issue. "Now, about those rules," Earl said, nodding toward the card in my pocket. "Let's go through them." I pulled out the laminated card and read the first rule aloud. Rule 1. Between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., all work must be performed inside the service bays with the doors closed. No exceptions. "That's right," Earl nodded. "Don't matter if it's a 5-minute job, you bring the vehicle inside and close those doors. Even for something simple like changing a tire." "Especially for that," he said firmly. Rule 2. If a customer asks to use the phone, direct them to the one in the office. Never let them use your cell phone or the shop phone. Good. Some folks get pushy about it, claiming emergencies. Don't budge. The third rule gave me pause. If a vehicle arrives with more passengers than seats, refuse service and press the red button under the front counter. "What's that about?" I asked. Earl's expression darkened. "Just follow the rule. You don't need to understand why." The remaining rules were equally bizarre. Rule 4. If you hear knocking on the exterior walls, ignore it. Do not investigate the source. Rule 5. If a black pickup truck with Louisiana plates arrives, tell them we're closed regardless of the time. Do not argue or engage further. Rule 6. No services after 3:33 a.m. until dawn, even for regular customers. Lock the doors and turn off the exterior lights. Rule 7. If a child appears alone, do not approach them. Call me immediately, regardless of the hour. These seem unusual for an auto shop, I said carefully. Earl's weathered face remained impassive. This is an unusual stretch of highway. Before I could ask more questions, headlights swept across the windows as a car pulled into the lot. Earl checked his watch. Your first customer, he said. I'll stick around. See how you handle it. A rusted Chevy Impala parked near the entrance. A middle-aged woman stepped out, her face tight with worry. Got a bad shimmy in the front end, she said as she entered. Been getting worse for the last few miles. She glanced nervously at the darkening sky. Need to get back on the road quick if you don't mind. Pull it into Bay 1, I instructed, remembering Rule 1. I'll take a look. As I guided her vehicle into the service bay, Earl gave me an approving nod before heading to his truck. Remember the rules, he said quietly. I'll check on you tomorrow. Once the bay door closed behind me, I put the Impala on the lift to inspect the front suspension. The woman sat on a plastic chair nearby, constantly checking her watch. You're new, she observed. What happened to Richie? I looked up from the wheel bearing I was examining. Don't know any Richie. I just started tonight." Her expression changed, something like pity crossing her features. "Oh, honey," she whispered, too low for me to properly hear. "Ma'am?" She shook her head. "Nothing. Just be careful here after midnight." Before I could ask what she meant, I discovered her problem, a failing tie rod end that was minutes away from complete failure. "You're lucky you stopped," I told her, showing her the damaged part. "This could have caused you to lose control entirely." While I replaced the part, the woman kept glancing at the closed bay door, as if expecting someone to burst through at any moment. When I finished, she paid in cash and practically ran to her car. "One bit of advice," she said as she climbed in. "If anyone comes asking about a ride to Little Rock tonight, you tell them you don't give rides, no matter how desperate they seem." She drove off, leaving me standing in the empty bay, wondering exactly what kind of job I'd taken. At midnight, I heard the first knocking on the exterior wall of the garage. I remembered Rule 4 and forced myself to focus on organizing tools. The knocking continued, growing more insistent, moving around the building as if someone, or something, was circling the garage. I cranked up the radio, but between songs I could still hear it. It was going to be a long night. The knocking continued intermittently for nearly an hour before finally stopping. I kept myself busy taking inventory of the shop supplies and familiarizing myself with the layout. The place had everything a decent garage should: hydraulic lifts, air compressors, tool chests stocked with Snap-on and Craftsman, and a parts room with the basics. Around 1:30 a.m., headlights swept across the windows. I moved to the front to see a mud-splattered Ford F-150 pulling in. 3 men climbed out, all wearing camouflage clothing and baseball caps. Duck hunters, I figured, given the season. "Evening," the tallest one said as they entered. His breath reeked of beer. "Got a busted belt, I think. Engine's making a racket." "Pull it into Bay 2, I said, gesturing to the garage door I'd just opened. "I'll take a look." While the driver moved the truck, his buddies wandered around the shop, examining tools and peering into cabinets. "You guys want some coffee while you wait?" I offered, remembering the ancient Mr. Coffee in the break room. "Nah," said the shorter of the two, a stocky guy with a patchy beard. "How long you worked here?" "First night, actually." They exchanged glances that made me uneasy. "You from around here?" asked the third man, who had remained silent until now. "Little Rock," I replied, trying to focus on guiding the truck onto the lift. "Bit of a drive. What brings you all the way out to this stretch of nowhere for work?" I shrugged. "Job market's tight. This pays well." Once I had the truck secured on the lift, I asked them to wait in the customer area while I worked. The taller one, who introduced himself as Wade, pushed back. "Mind if we watch? Always like to see what's happening with my vehicle." A reasonable request under normal circumstances, but Rule 1 gnawed at me. Earl had been emphatic about working with the bay doors closed. "Sorry, shop policy." "Insurance reasons," I lied, ushering them out and closing the bay door before they could object further. Through the small window in the door, I saw Wade frowning, having a heated discussion with his friends. I tried to focus on diagnosing the truck. It didn't take long to find the problem. A serpentine belt had snapped, luckily without damaging the engine. An easy fix, and we had the replacement part in stock. As I worked, I felt watched. Glancing toward the small window in the bay door, I caught Wade staring at me with an intensity that sent a chill through me. When our eyes met, he didn't look away. The job took about 40 minutes when I reopened the bay door, Only Wade was visible in the waiting area. "Where are your friends?" I asked, wiping grease from my hands. "Stepped out for a smoke," he said. "Find the problem?" I explained the belt issue and quoted him the price. He nodded and pulled out a wad of cash. "Mind if I use your bathroom before we head out?" I pointed him to the restroom door by the break room. As soon as he disappeared inside, I glanced out the front window, looking for his companions. The parking lot appeared empty except for their truck and my car. A toilet flushed, and Wade emerged. "Thanks for the quick fix. We need to get to our hunting spot before dawn." Something about his casual tone felt wrong. I could swear I'd only seen the three of them arrive in the single truck, but I didn't recall seeing anyone sitting in the back. As Wade paid, I caught movement from the corner of my eye, a shadow passing by the window. Then another. I tried to count. 1, 2, 3 shadows moving around the building. But Wade's friends had gone for a smoke, and I'd only seen 3 men arrive. So who was the fourth figure I'd just glimpsed? "All set," I said, handing him the receipt and keys. "Drive safe." Wade smiled, showing too many teeth. "Oh, we know this highway well. Been traveling it for years." He climbed into his truck alone. The engine started with a roar, and he pulled out of the lot, gravel crunching under the tires. I watched until his taillights disappeared around the bend. His friends never returned. The realization hit me like a bucket of ice water. I rushed to the front window, scanning the darkness. Nothing moved in the parking lot. I checked my watch. 2:17 a.m. My fingers trembled as I walked back to the counter and spotted something Wade had left behind. A tattered business card. I picked it up. It was from a funeral home in Crossett, almost 100 miles away. The date on the card was 1997. The shop phone rang, startling me so badly I knocked over a cup of pens. I stared at it, heart hammering, for 3 rings before answering. "Morgan's Auto Service," I managed. "They still there?" Earl's gruff voice demanded without preamble. "Who?" "The hunters." My mouth went dry. "How did you—" "Answer the question, son." "The driver left. I never saw where his friends went." Earl cursed under his breath. "Check every door and window. Make sure they're locked. Then stay in Bay 3 until 3:33. Don't come out for anything." "What's going on?" I demanded, fear giving my voice an edge. "Those guys weren't hunters," Earl finished. "And they ain't gone. They're testing you." "Testing me? What does that mean?" "Just do what I said. I'm on my way." The line went dead. I stood frozen for a moment. Then the sound of something scraping against the exterior wall jolted me into action. I moved quickly through the shop, checking doors and windows. Everything was secure except for a small window in the break room that was unlatched. I locked it with trembling fingers. Following Earl's instructions, I retreated to Bay 3, which was empty except for a partially disassembled Dodge Charger on jack stands. I closed the bay door behind me and wedged a pry bar through the handle for good measure. From somewhere outside came a sound like laughter, but distorted, too high-pitched and stretched out, like a recording played at the wrong speed. My phone showed no service. The shop phone was back in the office. I was alone with whatever circled the building. The knocking started again, this time on the bay door itself. I backed away, bumping into a tool chest. "We just need a ride to Little Rock," called a voice that sounded like Wade's, but wrong somehow, hollow, as if spoken through a long pipe. Our truck broke down again. "Be a pal." I remembered the woman's warning from earlier and remained silent. "We know you're in there," another voice called. This one barely a whisper, yet somehow audible through the metal door. "Just need to use your phone. Our friend's hurt bad." The pry bar in the door handle rattled, but held. "It's cold out here," said a third voice, this one childlike. "Please let me in. I'm scared." Rule 7 flashed in my mind. If a child appears alone, do not approach them. I huddled behind the charger, watching the door, until headlights flooded the cracks around its edges. A vehicle pulled up outside, and moments later, I heard Earl's voice. "Daryl? You in there?" I removed the pry bar and opened the door to find Earl standing there, shotgun in hand, scanning the darkness. "You did good," he said, lowering the weapon. "First night's always the worst. They were testing how well you follow rules." "Who were they?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Earl's expression was grim. "Locals call them the Highwaymen. They've been haunting this stretch since before I was born. Some say they're the ghosts of robbers who preyed on travelers, hung by a mob back in the 30s. Others think they're something older, something that was here before people." He checked his watch. "It's 3:28. Let's lock up until 6 o'clock. I'll show you where to wait out the dead time." As we walked through the darkened shop, I glimpsed movement outside the windows, tall shadows sliding across the gravel lot, melting into the tree line as dawn approached. "Will they come back?" I asked. Earl nodded solemnly. "Every night, but they're not the worst thing on Highway 365. I didn't sleep at all that day, turning over Earl's words in my mind. My second night started differently. Earl was waiting when I arrived, a thermos of coffee and a shotgun on the counter beside him. "Thought you might not come back," he said, sliding a ring of keys across the counter. "Most don't, after the first night." "Almost didn't," I admitted, accepting the keys. "But I need the money." Earl grunted, apparently satisfied with my honesty. "Got something to show you." He led me to a door I hadn't noticed before, tucked away in the corner of the parts room. It opened to reveal a narrow staircase leading down to a basement, unexpected for a garage built on Arkansas soil. "Storm shelter," Earl explained, noticing my confusion. Previous owner dug it out by hand in the 60s. The basement was surprisingly large and well furnished. A cot, mini fridge, ham radio setup, and walls lined with filing cabinets. A heavy metal door stood at the far end, secured with multiple deadbolts. "What's through there?" I asked. "Nothing you ever want to see," Earl replied flatly. "That stays locked. Always." He pointed to a shelf stacked with journals. Dozens of them, some so old the bindings were crumbling. Every night attendant since 1963 kept records. Things they saw, people who came through. He pulled down a dust-covered notebook. "Might help you understand what you're dealing with." I flipped it open. The handwriting was shaky. The pages yellowed with age. April 12th, 1978. Turned away the black pickup with Louisiana plates again. Driver claimed battery trouble. Saw extra arms reaching from backseat windows. Followed Rule 5. A chill ran through me as I remembered the 5th rule on my card. I chose another journal, this one from the 90s, October 31st, 1996. Child appeared at 2:17 a.m. asking to use phone. Called Morgan. Child disappeared when headlights approached. Later found small footprints in the mud, cloven like a deer's. Earl watched me read, his expression unreadable. "Each rule exists because someone died breaking it," he said quietly. "We learn the hard way out here." "Who made the rules?" I asked. "My grandfather started with 3. Each generation added more as we figured things out." He checked his watch. "It's almost 10. I should go." "Wait," I called as he reached the stairs. "What happened to the guy before me?" Earl paused, one foot on the bottom step. "Richie thought the rules were suggestions. Tried to help a crying child at 3:40 a.m. He shook his head. We never found enough to bury. With that cheerful thought, he left me alone to start my shift. The night began quietly. I busied myself with maintenance on a customer's motorcycle that had been left for service. Around midnight, a minivan pulled in, a family of 4 with a flat tire. They were anxious, the father repeatedly checking his watch while I worked inside the closed bay. "We're trying to make it to Memphis tonight," he explained. "Got turned around somehow. GPS keeps glitching out here." His young daughter, maybe 7 years old, stared at me with uncomfortable intensity while I mounted the spare tire. "The tapping men want to come inside," she announced suddenly. Her mother shushed her, embarrassed. "Chloe has an active imagination." But the girl continued, her voice eerily matter-of-fact. "They're very hungry. They've been hungry for a long time." "That's enough," her father said sharply. I finished the job quickly, eager to see them on their way. As they pulled out, the little girl pressed her face against the rear window, mouthing words I couldn't make out. Shortly after they left, the tapping started again, more insistent than before, moving around the building in a rhythmic pattern. I retreated to the office, checking that all exterior doors were locked. The shop phone rang at 1:23 a.m. "Morgan's Auto Service," I answered. Harsh breathing filled the line, followed by a voice that sounded like it was speaking through water. "Coming down the highway. Need help. Accident. Bleeding badly." "Where exactly are you?" I asked. "I can call an ambulance." "No time," the voice gurgled. 3 miles north, please come. Please." A chill ran through me. Rule 1 stated clearly that I couldn't leave the garage. Rule 6 prohibited service after 3:33 a.m. "I'll call emergency services for you," I offered. "No!" the voice shouted, suddenly clear and forceful. "Just you. Come alone. Follow the blood trail." I hung up, heart racing. The phone immediately rang again. I let it go to the answering machine. The same voice left a message, this time pleading, crying. The sound so genuine it made my stomach twist with guilt. I picked up the nearest journal, flipping through entries until I found one from February 2010. Got call about accident on highway. Against better judgment, drove out to help. Found empty road, no wreckage. Walking back to garage, saw something following in woods. Made it inside just before it reached me. Black ichor on door handle next morning. Never leave during shift. The phone finally stopped ringing after the 5th call. The silence felt heavier than the desperate pleas. At 2:30 a.m., headlights swept the lot as a tow truck pulled in. The driver, a heavy-set man with a tangled beard, entered the office. "Got a delivery for you," he said, dropping a clipboard on the counter from my signature. "Broke down about 10 miles south." "We don't accept unattended drop-offs," I said, remembering Earl's operations rundown. The driver shrugged. Owner said to leave it. Paid cash up front. He tapped the signature line. "Just doing my job, man." Something felt off. The tow truck's logo was for Haskell County Towing, but Haskell County was over 100 miles away. "Which garage handled the tow?" I asked, stalling. "My cousin's outfit," he replied too quickly. "We work together sometimes." My eyes drifted to the security mirror that showed the parking lot. The car on the flatbed was a black Cadillac DeVille, probably from the 90s. Its windows were tinted so dark they looked like voids in the night. Rule 3 flashed in my mind. If a vehicle arrives with more passengers than seats, refuse service. The Cadillac was a 5-seater, but through the driver's side window, I could make out shapes. Too many shapes, moving behind the tinted glass. "Sorry," I said, pushing the clipboard back. "Can't accept it without the owner present." The driver's expression darkened. "You sure about that, son?" Owner was pretty insistent. I reached under the counter, feeling for the red button mentioned in Rule 3. I'm sure. His eyes narrowed, then flicked to my hand beneath the counter. A slow smile spread across his face, revealing teeth that seemed too small, like those of a child. Another time then, he said, his voice dropping an octave. He backed toward the door, never turning his back to me. We'll see you around, Daryl Hatcher. I hadn't told him my name. As soon as he left, I pressed the red button. Instantly, floodlights illuminated the entire perimeter of the property, bathing the parking lot in harsh white light. The tow truck driver froze halfway to his vehicle, raising an arm to shield his eyes. For a split second, I thought I saw something impossible. His shadow stretching out behind him wasn't shaped like a man at all, but like something hunched and multi-limbed. He hurried to the tow truck and pulled away, the Cadillac still secured to the flatbed. I watched until the taillights disappeared. 10 minutes later, Earl's truck roared into the lot. He burst through the door, shotgun in hand. You pressed the button, he said. What came? I told him about the tow truck and the Cadillac with too many occupants. He nodded grimly. Consortium, he said, as if that explained everything. They try a new approach every few months. What do they want? I asked. Earl secured the front door with a heavy chain before answering. What every predator wants, easy prey. He nodded toward the highway. This stretch has been a hunting ground for centuries. The garage sits on what locals used to call a thin spot. Thin spot? Where things can cross over more easily. He checked the time, 3:15 a.m. Almost dead time. Let's get downstairs. As we descended to the basement, the knocking started again. No longer tapping, but pounding, hard enough to rattle the building's frame. They're angry tonight, Earl muttered. Buttons spoiled their hunt. In the basement, he tuned the ham radio to a frequency that emitted only static. White noise helps mask our presence during dead time, he explained. I spent the next 3 hours reading through journals, piecing together the garage's history. The original building had been a stagecoach stop in the 1800s, then a gas station, and finally, Morgan's Auto Service. Throughout its existence, something about this location attracted things that saw humans as prey, resources, or playthings. Each rule in the laminated card corresponded to a specific encounter, and usually a death. The red button had been installed in 1986 after 3 mechanics disappeared during a single month. The lights are blessed, Earl explained. Old Catholic priest from Little Rock comes out every year to renew it, drives the night things back to the woods. As dawn approached, the pounding faded. Earl checked his watch and nodded. Safe to go back up now, he said. Remember what you learned tonight. The rules aren't suggestions. They're survival. I left at 6:15 a.m., exhausted and shaken but somehow still employed. As I drove home, I spotted something in my rearview mirror. A black Cadillac parked on the shoulder, watching me leave. I pressed the accelerator harder, not slowing until I reached my apartment in Little Rock. The following week settled into an uneasy routine. I'd arrive before 10, check the basement journals for any new insights, then man the garage until dawn. The nighttime visitors continued, mostly legitimate customers with actual car troubles, though each night brought at least one encounter that tested the rules. On Thursday, my 5th night, I was changing the oil in a Subaru when I heard the radio in the office switch from country music to static. The temperature in the garage plummeted, my breath clouding in front of my face despite the Arkansas September heat. I checked the time, 11:47 p.m. The dead time didn't start until 3:33 a.m., according to Earl. The static from the radio grew louder, occasionally broken by snippets of what sounded like a news broadcast. Highway 365 accident claims 5. Search continues for missing family. authorities baffled by disappearance. These fragments repeated, overlapping in a disorienting cacophony. I tried to shut off the radio, but the knob came off in my hand. I unplugged it instead, but the broadcast continued. The bay door behind me suddenly shuddered, as if struck by something heavy. I whirled around, wrench in hand, but saw nothing through the small window except darkness. Then headlights swept across the parking lot, a vehicle pulling in. The radio immediately went silent. Through the office window, I watched a black pickup truck with Louisiana plates parked directly under the security light. Rule 5. If a black pickup truck with Louisiana plates arrives, tell them we're closed regardless of the time. My pulse quickened as I moved to the office, keeping the counter between myself and the entrance. The truck's engine shut off, but nobody emerged immediately. The windows were tinted too dark to see inside, but I could make out the silhouette of someone, or something, in the driver's seat. After nearly a minute, the driver's door opened. A tall, gaunt man in a dark suit stepped out, moving with an odd, jerky gait. His face remained shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. The bell jingled as he entered, bringing a smell like wet soil and something metallic. "Evening," he drawled, voice deep and resonant. "Got some trouble with my alternator, I believe." I kept my expression neutral. "Sorry, we're closed." He tilted his head at an odd angle. "Sign says open till morning." "Computer system's down for maintenance," I lied. "Can't process any work tonight." He smiled, revealing teeth too perfectly white and uniform. "I'd be happy to pay cash." My mouth went dry. "Still closed." The man reached into his suit pocket. I tensed, but he simply withdrew a business card, sliding it across the counter. The card was black with silver text, LaRouche Acquisitions, and a phone number with a New Orleans area code. "Perhaps another time," he said. "We're very interested in this property, Mr. Hatcher. Has been in our sights for generations." He knew my name, just like the tow truck driver. "You'd have to talk to the owner about that," I said, not touching the card. "Mr. Morgan is unreceptive to our proposals." The stranger's smile widened fractionally. "But ownership changes, eventually. All things do." His gaze drifted to the wall behind me, where a shotgun hung on pegs. "Interesting choice of security. Quite vintage." "I need to finish some paperwork," I said firmly. "Like I said, we're closed." He nodded, eyes never leaving mine. "One last thing. Have you checked the back seat of your car lately?" My blood ran cold. "Good night, Mr. Hatcher. We'll meet again." He backed toward the door, the same way the tow truck driver had, never turning his back to me. Outside, he paused by my Dodge Neon, running one pale hand along its roof before returning to his pickup. It raised a hand in a mocking wave as we drove past. I didn't return to my apartment that day. Instead, I checked into a motel on the outskirts of Little Rock, paid cash, and tried to sleep with a chair propped against the door. In my dreams, I drove endlessly down Highway 365, passing the same landmarks again and again while shadowy figures watched from the woods. I slept fitfully at the motel, waking every hour to check that my makeshift alarm system, empty soda cans balanced on the doorknob, remained undisturbed. By late afternoon, exhaustion won out, and I fell into a deeper sleep. The nightmare came vividly. I was driving down Highway 365 at night, windshield wipers fighting against torrential rain. My headlights illuminated only a few feet ahead, the darkness beyond absolute. The radio played static interspersed with fragments of voices calling my name. A figure appeared in the road, a child standing motionless in the downpour. I slammed on the brakes, the car fishtailing on the wet asphalt. As I skidded closer, the child turned, revealing a face with empty sockets where eyes should be. I jolted awake to my phone ringing. Earl's number. "You need to come in early," he said without preamble. "There's been an accident on the highway." My mouth was dry from sleep. What kind of accident? The kind that makes the rules more important. Be here by sunset. I arrived at Morgan's Auto Service as the sun dipped below the tree line, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. Earl's truck was parked next to a sheriff's department cruiser. Inside the office, Earl spoke in hushed tones with a deputy, a broad-shouldered man with a buzz cut and tired eyes. "This is Daryl, our night mechanic," Earl said as I entered. "Daryl, this is Deputy Rollins." The deputy nodded, his expression grave. "You been working here long?" "About a week," I replied, setting down my lunchbox. Earl interjected. "He knows about the highway." This seemed to satisfy Rollins, who pulled out a notepad. "We had a single vehicle accident about 2 miles north around 3 p.m. Family of 4 from Texas. Car ran off the road, hit a tree." I felt a chill despite the warm evening. "Casualties?" "Parents died on impact. 2 kids survived. Boy and girl, 8 and 10. He rubbed his face. "Here's the thing. The kids say someone was standing in the road. A woman in white just appeared out of nowhere." Earl and I exchanged glances. "Witness statements?" Earl asked. "None. Empty stretch of highway." Rollins lowered his voice. "Kids said something else weird. Claimed the woman had no face." My nightmare flashed through my mind. The child with empty eye sockets. "Where are the children now?" I asked. "Hospital in Little Rock. Child Services is trying to contact relatives." Rollins flipped his notebook closed. "Look, I know about this highway. Grew up hearing stories. My granddaddy was a deputy too, told me never to drive this stretch after dark." "Smart man," Earl muttered. "Thing is," Rollins continued, "accidents like this usually come in clusters. Whatever's out there gets active, stays active for a while." He fixed me with a serious look. "Be careful tonight." After the deputy left, Earl retrieved a worn leather-bound book from behind the counter, different from the employee journals I've been reading. "Local history," he explained, placing it on the counter. "Been in my family for generations. There's a pattern to these accidents." He opened to a hand-drawn map of Highway 365, marked with dozens of red X's. Each mark is a fatal accident blamed on a figure in the road. They cluster every 20 years or so. I studied the map. The marks did indeed appear in groups, with the most recent cluster dating to the early 2000s. "We're due for another cycle," Earl said grimly. "The accident today is likely just the first." "What causes it?" I asked. "The woman with no face?" Earl shook his head. "Not a woman. Called the hollow one in these pages. Shows itself differently. Sometimes a child, sometimes a woman, sometimes an old man, but always with something missing. Eyes, face, limbs." He turned to a yellowed photograph. A blurry image of a pale figure at the roadside. Its features indistinct, except for the dark voids where eyes should be. "It feeds on grief," Earl continued. "The accident creates mourners, and mourners become marked. Vulnerable. Marked how? The survivors, the ones who grieve. They start seeing it everywhere, in mirrors, through windows, in crowds. Eventually they follow it." Earl's voice trailed off. "Few ever come back." The implications were chilling. "And the children from today's accident?" "Already marked," Earl said, his voice heavy with resignation. "Nothing we can do for them now except hope their relatives take them far away from here." He slid a small silver pendant across the counter. "Wear this tonight. St. Christopher medal. Blessed in everything." I slipped it over my head, though I'd never been religious. "Will it help?" "Can't hurt." Earl replied pragmatically. I'm staying till midnight. Too dangerous for just one person tonight. The early hours of my shift passed uneventfully. A couple of locals came in for minor repairs, clearly familiar with the garage's reputation. They were nervous, repeatedly checking the time, eager to be on their way before full dark. Around 11, a tractor-trailer pulled in, its air brakes hissing in the night. The driver, a heavy-set man with a salt and pepper beard, complained of electrical problems, dashboard lights flickering, radio cutting in and out. Started about a mile back, he explained, while Earl and I examined the truck in the closed bay. Never had this rig act up before. Earl checked the battery connections while I inspected the fuse panel. Everything looks normal, I said. The truck driver fidgeted, checking his watch. Look, I need to make Syracuse by tomorrow afternoon. Can you fix it or not? You staying on 365? Earl asked casually. All the way to Missouri, yeah. Earl and I exchanged glances. Maybe you should consider taking Interstate 40 instead, I suggested. Longer route, but better lit. The driver frowned. GPS says this is faster. GPS doesn't know everything, Earl muttered, closing the hood. Your truck's fine. Probably just a momentary glitch in the system. The driver seemed skeptical but relieved to be back on the road without a repair bill. As he climbed into his cab, Earl pressed a small wooden cross into his hand. Keep this on your dashboard, he said. Family tradition, for safe travels. The confused but appreciative driver thanked him and pulled away, heading north up Highway 365. Think he'll be okay? I asked as we watched his taillights disappear. If he makes it past the county line, probably. Earl checked his watch. Almost midnight. I should head out. As Earl was preparing to leave, the shop phone rang. He answered, his expression darkening as he listened. When? He asked. Then, how many? After a pause, we'll be ready. He hung up, turning to me with grim determination. That was Rollins. Tractor-trailer jackknifed about 5 miles north. Drivers swerved to avoid someone standing in the road. My stomach dropped. The driver who was just here. Earl nodded. Multiple vehicle pileup. At least 3 confirmed fatalities. Rollins says they're flying in helicopter medevac from Little Rock. Should we go help? I asked, already knowing the answer. No, our job is here. Earl checked the shotgun, loading it with the special shells. The hollow one will be feeding tonight. Accident that big creates a lot of grief, a lot of marks. As if on cue, the lights flickered. The radio in the corner sprang to life, playing static interspersed with what sounded like distant screams. They're coming, Earl said, his voice steady despite the fear evident in his eyes. Remember the rules. No matter what you hear, no matter what you see, follow the rules. The night descended into chaos after Earl left. I sealed myself in the garage, following his instructions to recheck every lock, every window. The tapping started almost immediately. No longer just knocking, but scraping, clawing sounds that circled the building. At 1:17 a.m., headlights swept across the parking lot as a mangled car pulled in. Half the vehicle's front end was crushed, the windshield a spiderweb of cracks. Impossibly, it still ran. A woman staggered from the driver's seat, face streaked with blood, clothes torn. She pounded on the office door, leaving smears of red on the glass. "Please," she screamed. "My husband's trapped in the wreck. We need help." I stood frozen behind the counter, Rule 1 echoing in my mind. All work must be performed inside the service bays, with doors closed. "I can see you in there," she wailed. "Please, he's dying." I grabbed the counter phone, dialing 911. It rang once before the line went dead. The woman pressed her bloody face against the door glass. "Why won't you help us?" she sobbed. I steeled myself and approached the door, speaking loudly through the glass. "Drive to the bay door. I'll help inside." Her expression shifted subtly. "Just come out. It's faster." "Can't do that," I replied. "Insurance regulations. Pull around to the bay." She tilted her head, studying me. "You're not like the others, are you? You actually follow the rules." A chill ran down my spine as her injuries seemed to fade before my eyes, the blood disappearing, her torn clothes mending themselves. "Such a shame," she said, voice now perfectly calm. "There's been such grief tonight, such feeding. You could have joined them." She turned and walked back to the crushed car, which no longer leaked fluids or steam despite its devastating damage. As she drove away, I noticed there was no one in the passenger seat. Had never been anyone there. My phone buzzed with a text from Earl. "Do not open doors until dawn. Accident worse than thought. Hollow one feeding." The rest of the night brought similar visitations. Bloodied motorists begging for help, crying children seeking shelter, even a facsimile of Deputy Rollins claiming he needed to take a statement about the accident. Each time, I held firm to the rules, watching as their disguises slipped when denied entry. By 3:30 a.m., I retreated to the basement for the dead time, listening to the sounds of something heavy being dragged across the roof. The journals provided cold comfort, page after page documenting similar nights throughout the decades, nights when the highway claimed multiple lives, and the things that fed on grief came hunting. One entry from 1973 caught my eye. "The Hollow One marks its prey through reflection. Never look at it directly, never through glass or water or mirror." Too late, I realized I'd done exactly that, seen the woman's reflection in the office door glass. I was marked now. Dawn arrived with a bloody sun rising through wisps of fog. I emerged from the basement at 6 a.m., bleary-eyed and jittery from too much coffee and fear. The garage appeared untouched, though a peculiar, ashy residue coated the windows like frost. Earl arrived shortly after, his truck splattered with mud. He looked as exhausted as I felt. "Bad night," he said simply, tossing his keys on the counter. 7 dead at the accident site. 3 more at the hospital. "Jesus," I whispered. "What about the truck driver?" Earl shook his head. "DOA. Found his cab crushed beneath a chemical tanker. The wooden cross I gave him was clutched in his hand." Guilt washed over me. We'd sent him back onto that highway. "You couldn't have known," Earl said, reading my expression. "Highway's been hungry lately." I helped him check the exterior of the building. The ashy residue wiped away easily, leaving smears that smelled faintly of copper and rot. Near the rear door, we found a row of strange markings scratched into the metal siding, curved symbols resembling hooks or claws. "Claiming marks," Earl explained grimly. "They're getting bolder." "What does it mean?" "Means they think they've got a right to this place." He traced one symbol with a weathered finger. "This one's new. Never seen it before." As I prepared to leave, Earl noticed the dark circles under my eyes. "You look like hell. Something happened I should know about?" I hesitated, then confessed. "I saw her reflection. The woman who wasn't really hurt." Earl's face darkened. "The Hollow One. How'd you see it?" "Through the glass door, when she was pretending to need help." He cursed under his breath, disappearing into the parts room. He returned with a small jar containing what looked like gray salt crystals. "Iron filings, graveyard dirt, and salt," he explained. "Mix with water. Wash your face, hands, and eyes before sleeping. Might keep it from finding you in dreams." "In dreams?" "That's how it works. Gets in your head while you sleep, shows you things, leads you out onto the highway." He pressed the jar into my hand. "Don't drive Highway 365 today. Take the long way home." I followed his advice, adding 40 minutes to my commute by taking Interstate 530 instead. Despite the precaution, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every reflective surface, car windows, storefront glass, even puddles from the previous night's rain, seemed to hide shapes at the edge of my vision. The day passed in a haze of exhaustion. I used Earl's mixture as directed before collapsing into bed at my motel room. Sleep came quickly, but brought no rest. In my dream, I stood on Highway 365 under a sky swollen with storm clouds. The air felt charged, electric. In the distance, a pale figure waved, beckoning me forward. I knew I shouldn't approach, yet my feet carried me toward it anyway. As I drew closer, I saw it was a woman in a white dress, her back to me. Her hair moved oddly in a windless air, writhing like live wires. "Who are you?" I called. She turned slowly, revealing not a face, but a mirror where her features should be. In the reflection, I saw myself, but wrong somehow. Eyes too wide, smile too fixed. My reflection spoke. "We've been waiting for you, Daryl." I woke, gasping, drenched in sweat. The digital clock read 4:17 p.m. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Earl. I called back immediately. "You okay?" he demanded when he answered. "Bad dreams," I said, still shaken. "The hollow one." "Listen carefully." Earl's voice was tense. "Rollins just called. 3 survivors from last night's accident have gone missing from the hospital. Walked out on their own. Witnesses say they were talking about meeting someone on Highway 365. The hollow one is calling them back to the accident site. Got it in one. I'm heading there now with Rollins." There was a pause. "We can handle tonight without you. Stay away from the highway." "No," I said firmly, surprising myself. "I'll be there. It's my job." Earl was silent for a moment. "Your choice, but if you come, bring a weapon. Not for the ghosts, for the living. People who've been marked. They're not themselves anymore." I arrived early, around 9 p.m., the setting sun painting the horizon in shades of blood and rust. Earl's truck was absent, but a sheriff's department cruiser sat in the lot with its light bar off. Deputy Rollins leaned against the hood, smoking a cigarette. "Earl's checking the accident site," he explained as I approached. "Thought I'd wait for you. Any sign of the missing patients?" Rollins shook his head. "Nothing yet, but they'll come. The marked always do." Inside, I found a note from Earl with additional instructions. "Daryl, if I'm not back by 10, assume I'm still at the scene. The hollow one is strongest near places of fresh death. Stay inside, follow the rules. Added Rule 8 to your card. Read it now. Earl." I pulled out my laminated rule card. A new entry had been handwritten at the bottom. Rule 8. If you see your own reflection moving independently or speaking, break the reflective surface immediately. Do not listen to what it says. Rollins entered behind me, glancing at the card over my shoulder. "New rule, huh? Those never come with good stories." "Do you know the origin of this one?" I asked. He shook his head. "Before my time. But I know the hollow one works through reflections." We spent the next hour securing the garage, checking locks and windows. Rollins helped me lay down lines of salt at each threshold, a practice I would have scoffed at a week earlier, but now accepted without question. At 10:15 p.m., Rollins received a radio call. He listened, expression growing more concerned. "They found a survivor from the accident walking along the shoulder about a mile from the crash site," he told me after signing off. "I need to go assist." "Is Earl still out there?" "No sign of him at the scene." Rollins checked his sidearm. "If he comes back while I'm gone, tell him we've got a live one." After Rollins left, the garage fell into eerie silence. I busied myself with inventory, trying to ignore the occasional sounds from outside, distant screams that might have been human or might have been nocturnal animals. At 11:32 p.m., headlights appeared in the lot. Earl's truck pulled up, and he hurried inside, his clothes mud-stained and torn. "Where's Rollins?" he demanded without preamble. "Got a call about a survivor. Left about 20 minutes ago." Earl cursed. There weren't any survivors walking around out there. I checked the whole area. My blood ran cold. Then who called him? Not who. What? Earl locked the door behind him. "The Hollow One is isolating us, picking us off one by one." He pulled out his phone, dialing Rollins. It went straight to voicemail. "Signal's dead. Happens when it's active." Earl moved to the office window, scanning the darkness. "We need to..." He broke off suddenly, staring at something outside. "What is it?" I asked, moving to join him. "Don't look," he snapped. "It's Rollins. Or something wearing his shape." Against my better judgment, I glanced out the window. Rollins stood in the parking lot beside his cruiser, waving toward the garage with unnatural, jerky movements. His face was obscured by the angle and darkness. "He's not answering his radio," Earl said, voice low. "And he's standing right in front of his headlights." So there's no shadow behind him." I looked again and felt my stomach drop. Earl was right. The deputy stood directly in the headlight beams, but cast no shadow on the gravel behind him. "What do we do?" I whispered. "Follow the rules. Don't let him in." Earl retrieved the shotgun from behind the counter. "Stay away from windows and doors." The radio in the corner suddenly crackled to life, Rollins' voice emerging through the static. "Morgan? Hatcher, I need assistance. Got a situation out here." Earl ignored it, motioning for me to back away from the window. "I can see you in there," the voice continued, no longer coming from just the radio, but seemingly from all around us. "Let me in. We need to talk." The thing wearing Rollins' form approached the door, its movements growing more disjointed with each step, as if it was a puppet operated by someone unfamiliar with human locomotion. It pressed its face against the glass, and I had to stifle a scream. Where Rollins' features should have been was a blank, smooth surface, like skin stretched over a mannequin. "Last chance," it called, voice now distorted. "Let me in, or I'll bring the others." Earl raised the shotgun. "Back away from the door!" The thing tilted its head, neck extending several inches longer than a human should. Then it smiled, a tear opening across the blank face to reveal not teeth, but dozens of tiny mirrors. "The marked are coming," it said, voice now a chorus of overlapping whispers. "She's bringing them all home." It backed away toward the cruiser, movement skittering and jerky. As it reached the vehicle, 3 more figures emerged from the darkness beyond the headlights. People in hospital gowns, their gaits unsteady but purposeful. The missing accident survivors, the marked. "Get to the basement," Earl ordered. "Now." As I turned to run, I caught sight of my reflection in the office window. It wasn't moving with me. It was standing still, watching, a smile spreading across its face that I wasn't making. I froze, remembering Rule 8. "Earl," I called, voice shaking. "My reflection." He followed my gaze to the window and immediately smashed it with the butt of the shotgun, shattering the glass and the independent reflection with it. "Run!" he shouted, shoving me toward the parts room. "Basement now!" As we rushed through the shop, every reflective surface, toolboxes, chrome fixtures, the side mirrors of a car on the lift, showed my reflection moving wrong, turning to watch us flee even as I ran. Behind us, the sound of breaking glass told me the things outside had gotten in. We made it to the basement just as the office door splintered. Earl slammed the basement door behind us, securing it with 3 heavy deadbolts. From above came sounds of destruction. Glass breaking, metal scraping, shelves toppling. "They've never been this aggressive," Earl muttered, moving to the gun cabinet in the corner. He unlocked it, revealing an arsenal that would make a militia envious. Shotguns, rifles, and handguns, all with the same strange symbols carved into their stocks and barrels. He handed me a revolver. Iron bullets with silver casings. Won't kill them, but might slow them down. "Kill what exactly?" I demanded, my nerves frayed to breaking. "What are these things, Earl?" "Really?" Earl checked his shotgun before answering. Highway 365 wasn't always a highway. Long before that, it was a trail used by native tribes, then settlers. There's always been something wrong with this stretch of land, like a tear in the fabric between worlds. From upstairs came a deafening crash, followed by an inhuman wailing that made my skin crawl. The things we see, the highwaymen, the Hollow One, the LaRouche entity, they're just fragments, pieces that slip through. Earl rummaged through a drawer, pulling out shotgun shells and distributing them between us. "This garage sits at the weakest point, what the natives called the hungry place. My family's been guarding it for 3 generations. Why didn't you tell me all this before I took the job?" Earl's weathered face showed a flicker of shame. "Would you have believed me? Would you have stayed?" Before I could answer, something heavy slammed against the basement door. The wood groaned but held. "They're trying to get to the door," Earl said, pointing to the metal door at the far end of the basement, the one with multiple locks that he'd explicitly told me to never open. A voice called from the top of the stairs, a perfect imitation of Rollins. "Morgan?" We found another survivor. "Need medical assistance." Earl ignored it, moving to the hand radio setup. He began broadcasting on a frequency that produced only static. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Calling in backup," he replied cryptically. "There's a network of folks who know about this place. Other families who guard other thin spots." Another voice joined the first. This one eerily familiar. My voice. "Earl," it called. "Something's wrong with me. I need help." My doppelganger's pleas were followed by the sounds of more breaking glass, then a strange scraping, as if something heavy was being dragged across the floor above. "They're persistent tonight," Earl muttered. "Hollow One must be desperate to feed. How long can we hold out down here?" "Till dawn, if we're lucky." He glanced at his watch. 4 more hours. The basement door shuddered under another impact, wood splintering around the hinges. Earl positioned himself with a clear shot at the entrance, gesturing for me to take cover behind a filing cabinet. "If they break through," he instructed, "aim for the eyes or the mouth, even if they look human." The pounding intensified, then stopped abruptly. Silence fell, broken only by our ragged breathing. Then, from directly outside the door, a new voice. A child's voice. "Mr. Morgan? Mr. Hatcher? I'm scared. Please let me in." Earl's knuckles whitened around the shotgun. "Rule 7, he whispered. "Never approach a child alone." "But it's me, Joey," the voice continued, breaking with convincing sobs. "From the accident. My mom and dad are gone. I'm all alone out here." My heart constricted despite knowing it was a trap. The voice sounded so authentic, so terrified. "Mr. Hatcher?" The child's voice called directly to me now. "You fixed my mom's car last week, remember? The flat tire. Please, I'm so scared." The family in the minivan. The little girl who had stared at me with unnerving intensity. But she'd been a girl, not a boy. "It's lying," I said softly. "Trying to confuse us." Earl nodded grimly. They always do. The child's pleas continued, interspersed with heart-wrenching sobs that grew increasingly desperate, then abruptly morphed into high-pitched laughter that made my blood freeze. "We see you through every mirror, Daryl Hatcher," the voice said, no longer childlike, but an unsettling chorus of overlapping tones. "We've been watching you sleep. So easy to mark you." "Don't listen," Earl warned. "They get in your head." The voice shifted again. "Earl Morgan, the last guardian. Your father died protecting the door. Your grandfather too. The door that should never be opened. But you will open it. Tonight." Earl's expression hardened. "Not while I'm breathing." "That can be arranged," the voice hissed. Another crash from upstairs, followed by the sound of breaking glass. Then silence. "Did they leave?" I whispered after several minutes of quiet. Earl shook his head. "They don't give up that easily. They're trying another approach." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text message. Somehow I had signal down here. The message was from a number I didn't recognize. "Come outside. The door must be opened. It's the only way to stop the accidents." Another text followed immediately. "Look at yourself in the mirror. See what you really are." My hands shook as I turned the phone to show Earl. "Don't reply," he said. "Don't even look at the screen for too long. They can reach through reflections." I placed the phone face down on a shelf, just as it buzzed again. Despite Earl's warning, I couldn't resist checking. A photo had been sent. A picture of me sleeping in my motel room, taken that very afternoon. Standing next to the bed was a featureless figure, its hand outstretched toward my unconscious form. Cold sweat broke out across my body. "They've been in my room," Earl cursed, moving to check the basement's small bathroom. He returned with a hammer, systematically smashing the mirror above the sink. "No reflective surfaces," he muttered. "They can track you through them. See what you see." From upstairs came a new sound, something being dragged across the floor, heavy and metallic. Then the distinctive clang of the vehicle lift in operation. "What the hell are they doing up there?" I whispered. "Creating access," Earl replied grimly. "If they can't get through the door, they'll try to come through the ceiling." We heard a sizzling noise, like a torch cutting through metal. Earl pointed to a section of the basement ceiling directly above the locked metal door. "That's where they're cutting through," he said. "They want access to what's behind that door." "What is behind it?" I demanded. "What's actually in there, Earl?" He hesitated, clearly weighing how much to tell me. Finally, he sighed. "Not what? Who?" "My mother." I stared at him in confusion. "Your mother?" "Not entirely, not anymore." His voice was heavy with something between grief and fear. "She was the first in our family to encounter the Hollow One back in 1962. It marked her, but differently than the others. Instead of leading her out to the highway, it changed her." The cutting noises grew louder, accompanied by the smell of burning metal. "She started seeing things that weren't there, hearing voices. Then the physical changes began." Earl's face was ashen in the dim light. "Dad tried to help her, tried everything. Doctors, priests, even a woman from New Orleans who worked with spirits. Nothing helped. Worse than that, she became a conduit, a way for them to cross over more easily." He gestured to the locked door. "By 1965, Dad had no choice. He built that room, reinforced with iron and salt and every protection he knew. She's been in there ever since." I struggled to comprehend what he was telling me. "Your mother has been locked in that room for over 50 years. What's in there stopped being my mother a long time ago," Earl said, voice breaking slightly. "On her lucid days, she begs us not to let her out, says she can feel the others using her, waiting to come through. The cutting sound abruptly stopped. Dust filtered down from the ceiling as something heavy shifted above. "They're almost through," Earl said, raising his shotgun. "Whatever happens, that door stays closed. If they get to her, if they use her as a gateway." He didn't need to finish the thought. The implications were clear. A section of the ceiling collapsed, and something pale and writhing dropped through. Not a person, not even a recognizable shape, but a mass of constantly shifting limbs and features, like multiple bodies fused together. Earl fired immediately, the shotgun blast echoing deafeningly in the confined space. The thing screeched, a sound that pierced my eardrums like physical pain. It retreated partially into the hole, but didn't withdraw completely. I fired the revolver, aiming as Earl had instructed for what seemed to be a cluster of reflective surfaces, like dozens of tiny mirrors embedded in the writhing mass. The bullet struck true, and the thing wailed again, more of its bulk dropping through the ceiling. "The door!" Earl shouted over the noise. "Protect the door!" We backed toward the metal door, weapons raised, as more of the ceiling gave way. The thing that dropped through completely defied description. A nightmare assemblage of mismatched human parts, reflective surfaces, and darkness that seemed to absorb light. In its center, I caught a glimpse of what might have been the Hollow One's true form. Not a faceless woman or child, but a void in the shape of a human. A negative space that pulled at my vision and sanity. Earl emptied the shotgun into it, each blast driving it back momentarily before it surged forward again. My revolver clicked empty as the thing loomed over us, expanding to fill most of the basement. "The keys," Earl gasped, pressing a ring of iron keys into my hand. "If I don't make it, at dawn, my mother." Before he could finish, a pale limb shot out from the mass, wrapping around Earl's throat and yanking him into its bulk. I screamed his name, lunging forward only to be driven back by a wave of cold that burned like fire. Earl's shotgun clattered to the floor as he was absorbed into the writhing mass. For a moment, I saw his face, eyes wide with terror and determination, mouth forming one word: "Run." Instead, I grabbed the shotgun, loaded the last shell, and fired point blank into what I hoped was the thing's center. It recoiled with a shriek that shattered glass and made my ears bleed. The mass contracted, then surged toward the metal door. I threw myself against it, keys clutched in my bloody hand, as the thing pressed against me from all sides, seeking entry to what lay beyond. "The door stays closed," I gasped, echoing Earl's words. The pressure increased, crushing me against the metal. In desperation, I reached for the protective charm Earl had given me, pressing it against the nearest writhing limb. The effect was instantaneous. The thing recoiled as if burned, shrieking in a cacophony of voices. It retreated toward the hole in the ceiling, taking Earl with it. The last thing I saw before losing consciousness was the basement door bursting open and a blinding light flooding down the stairs. I woke in an unfamiliar room, sunlight filtering through dusty curtains. My body ached as if I'd been run over, bandages wrapped around my hands and forearms. The walls were covered with faded floral wallpaper, the furniture antique, but well-maintained. A woman sat beside the bed, not much older than me, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked up from a worn leather journal, one of the garage records. "Welcome back," she said. "I'm Marissa Morgan, Earl's daughter." "Earl," I croaked, memories flooding back. "Is he? Dad's gone," she said quietly. "But you already knew that." I had. I'd seen him consumed by that writhing mass of darkness and reflection. "What happened?" I asked. "How did you find me?" "Dad called me before everything went sideways, said the Hollow One was feeding, that the LaRouche entity was making a push for the garage." She closed the journal. I got there just after dawn. Found you unconscious against Mother's door. Mother's door. The metal door with its multiple locks, concealing Earl's transformed mother, a conduit to whatever lay beyond the thin spot. I used the keys, I confessed. Earl gave them to me before he was taken. He said something about Dawn. Marissa's expression shifted. Surprise, then grim understanding. You unlocked it? Just one lock. Then I passed out. She studied me with eyes remarkably like her father's. The sunrise ritual. One lock opened at dawn weakens the connection, allows her some peace. Dad did it every morning. What happens now? I asked, sitting up despite the pain. Now you decide, she said, placing a familiar laminated card on the bedside table. The rules card, with an addition. Rule 9. The garage must never be abandoned. Someone must always maintain the rules and the locks. Highway 365 is quiet for now, Marissa continued. The hollow one fed well that night. 10 deaths, 17 marked. It won't be hungry again for a while. She stood, moving to the window to look out at farmland stretching to the horizon. Dad prepared for this, left instructions. This house, my grandmother's house, is yours if you want it. 20 minutes from the garage. Protected ground. And if I walk away? Then I sell the garage. The rules get forgotten. The door eventually fails. She turned back to me, her expression hard. And whatever killed my father uses my mother to tear a hole between worlds.
Calm down.
I took a shuddering breath. Why me? Dad said you followed the rules, even when faced with numerous choices. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Rare quality these days. She left the room, returning with a cardboard box. Dad's things from the office. Thought you might want them. Inside lay Earl's shotgun, the protective charms, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. I opened it with trembling fingers. Daryl, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Highway 365 claimed me like it claimed my father and his father before him. The garage needs a guardian, someone who understands what's at stake. I chose you because you're smart enough to be afraid, but brave enough to stay anyway. The rules will keep you alive. The rituals will keep the door secure. That's all that matters. Earl Morgan P.S. Don't take Highway 365 at night. Ever. I moved to the window, gazing at the distant strip of asphalt cutting through pine forests toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, a faceless woman stood at the roadside, beckoning to the marked. Somewhere in those woods, the highwaymen waited for nightfall. And beneath Morgan's auto service, something that once was Earl's mother, strained against a metal door with too many locks. I had been marked. I would always be marked. But I understood the rules now. And rules, as Earl said, were about survival.
That's why I drink. I think it's what it is.